competition is healthy, and I think it's really important to teach young children you can't always be the best, and that's okay. But give your best.
Welcome back to the NatWest Business Show. Now, today we are honoured to have an extraordinary guest with us. Beth Tweddle is a name synonymous with excellence and resilience in the world of gymnastics. She is a 3-time world champion, 6-time European champion, and an Olympic bronze medalist, and was the first British gymnast to win a world championship title with the uneven bars. Beyond her incredible achievements in gymnastics, Beth has successfully transitioned into the business world. In her journey from elite athlete to entrepreneur, she has founded her own company and overseen not 1, but 2 successful sales in the last year and a half. We are so excited to have her here, Beth. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, amazing. Listen, now, before we get into your story, which is absolutely fascinating and brilliant, I'd love for you to share a business confession. It's something we do at the start of the podcast. So this could be a moment of failure that became a springboard for success, excuse the pun, or an accident or mistake that turned out to be a masterstroke. So what confession do you have for us today?
For me, it was whilst I was kind of making that transition,
Right.
I remember going into kind of a board meeting scenario, and obviously you're around a table, everyone you're very aware is high up in their positions, and they're talking all through the reports and everything, and I'm quite happily writing my notes away.
Yeah.
And I think everyone thought I was writing notes about the meeting. I was genuinely writing notes on words that I had no idea what it meant. Knowing that I was going to go out of that room and either speak to my dad, because he had worked in business for years, or just go and Google what the words meant. So yeah, I think that's my kind of confession, that I was totally out of my comfort zone, didn't really know how to handle it, so I just kind of kept it to myself, thinking I don't want other people to think I don't know what I'm doing and I shouldn't really be in that room. And yeah, I just went away, and it was my dad saying to me afterwards, Beth, why didn't you just ask the questions? They don't expect you to know everything. And that was a real key learning for me. There's never a silly question.
Yeah.
And I'm really conscious of that now. When I've got team members in meetings with me, I always try and check, do you understand? Is there anything you need kind of that support with?
But I'm sure that those people at the room probably thought that you were just being uber
I think
efficient.
they were.
Because they're like, it's Beth. She is amazing. She's making every note, something, but they're probably being very much on it.
Well, they know I'm very much an attention to detail person.
Yeah.
So they know that I always have my notebook with me, always writing stuff down. So I genuinely thought that's what they thought I was doing, and not just writing keywords down.
Or doodling in that meeting.
Yeah, doodling.
Now, you are a bit of a smart cookie.
I wouldn't say that.
I think so. Now, you retired in 2013. We've talked about all the incredible things that you've achieved in your life, but you already at that point had fingers in pies.
I did. From an early age, I knew gymnastics. For me, it was a hobby. I loved what I did. I was successful at it. But I also was very aware that I would have a career outside of gymnastics as well.
Even though you were so good and you did...
Yeah, gymnastics, I mean, when I first started, it wasn't a professional sport at all. There wasn't the opportunity to have a career within gymnastics, I would say. And I also had a career-threatening injury when I was 12.
Right.
The doctors kind of said to my parents, we're not sure whether she'll get back to competing. So I think my parents were very key during that progression of, Beth, you need to have a backup plan. My coach was very supportive of having that backup plan. So obviously early on it was having my GCSEs, making sure that I took time to do my studies as well as my training. After my GCSEs, it was a little bit more relaxed. I did 2 A-levels rather than the kind of 4 that all my friends were doing. And then I had the pathway to go into university, had a sports scholarship with that. So there was always that element of having education as a fallback, because ultimately you can pick up a career-threatening injury at any moment.
Which you had at a young age, which would have been quite scary.
Yeah, and I guess at 12 I I wasn't thinking about the future. I was just doing what I loved. But it was that support network around me of my parents kind of encouraging that with the support of my coach.
Yeah.
And then we also, as a funded athlete, you had access to a grant funding that allowed you to kind of explore education. So towards the end of my career, I started doing little courses, whether it was a sports massage course, a bookkeeping course, so that I could experience different types of work and kind of go, do you know what, is this for me? Is it not? And I very quickly learned that bookkeeping absolutely is not for me. But it allowed me to explore that stuff rather than retiring and then having to explore it. And I guess my business partner early on in my career, Steve, he came and spoke to me. He set up his own business, having won an Olympic medal in 2004, set up a swimming business. And he approached me and just said, look, Beth, this is what I've done with swimming. Would you be interested in doing something with gymnastics? And I kind of said, yeah, like my two passions are gymnastics and working with children.
Yeah.
If I can do a business where I'll wake up every single day working with my two passions, it's not work to me. It's just doing what I love.
So a no-brainer, really.
Exactly. So that's kind of where it stemmed from. So I think I owe a lot to Steve for kind of approaching me, giving me that opportunity.
And planting that seed.
Definitely planting that seed, because I'd never really thought about having a business in gymnastics prior to that. Little did I know, kind of, what are we, nearly 14 years later, where that conversation was going to kind of end up.
Yeah. And I suppose, one of the things I was going to ask you is why gymnastics for children, but you would have seen firsthand what it gave you as a child.
Yeah.
And also just how they're like sponges and they want to learn, and you can just let all this energy out with them.
I think there's a number of reasons. Gymnastics gave me so many opportunities. Do you know what? It taught me how to do some pretty cool tricks. And obviously, I got to travel, I got to win some great medals. But actually, it's only since I've retired, it's the development through gymnastics. So yes, I can teach a child how to do a forward roll and a cartwheel, but actually it's the other skill sets that you gain from sport. So whether it's teamwork, resilience, perseverance, determination, there's so many other things that young children can learn through sport as well. And I think that's been really instrumental throughout my business, trying to develop children through sport, not just teaching them the sport of gymnastics. And I love working with kids. I love seeing that smile when a child does a skill for the first time and they've been practicing and practicing, and whoever's there to pick up, they run over and they go, look what I've done, look what I've done. And I see the reaction with my daughter now. She comes out with a certificate and she's like, Mummy, look what I've got. And I'm like, what was that for? She's like, I did a jump on the big beam today. And that sense of elation from them, it gives me goosebumps when you kind of see that.
Yeah. And I just wanted to quickly touch on the fact that you had something in place, even at the top of your, you were there. And I think that's a really good business acumen that you've got there, that even when you were successful, there was a possibility that you could go on to other things. You might have known you were going to retire, but you already had something in place. And a lot of people who are successful sometimes don't have that backup plan. Did that give you sort of, not comfort, but reassurance that whatever happened, whether you got injured, whether that was the end, there was always something there for you?
Yeah, definitely. And again, it was due to the people around me that allowed me to do that. So Steve, he said, look, Beth, I understand you're still competing. You want to go to the Olympics in 2012. I guess I played more of an ambassador role to start with within the business. My name was on the product and I was very much involved in what happened, but I wasn't doing the day-to-day kind of operating of the business, but I was very much aware of what was happening. But it was that comfort of knowing when you step away, what is my identity? And it still was strange, don't get me wrong, for 21 years, all I'd ever known was gymnastics or education. And even I remember having a conversation with my coach, kind of, how do I say it? What do I need to do? And she's like, you can say the word retired, Beth. Like, you can step away from the sport. And it took me a year to the day, kind of from the Olympics, to tell, I think, myself that I am stepping away from competitive sport, because it was me. That was my routine. That was my identity. That's who I was. So to suddenly wake up in the morning and not be like, okay, I'm an international athlete. Who am I? Whereas actually, because I did school visits, I had my business, I was doing dancing on ice at the time, I had other things to keep my mind occupied and challenge me. And then I'm not someone to just sit still. And I think that's what I was worried about, is not having something there to do. I had 1 year in 2003 into the Olympics 2004, where all of my friends went off to university. We'd just finished our A levels, and I made the decision to just focus on gymnastics. And I would say that was the hardest moment of my career, just being a gymnast, not having anything else to do. And even my coach said to me, right, when she knew I was continuing after the Olympics, she said, well, what are we going to do? Because you're a busy person. You can't just have gymnastics in your life. And that's where kind of the decision was made to go to university and be able to combine the two.
Well, you must be really focused to...
I found it really helped me, because if I was having a hard day in the gym, I could go home, I could be with my university friends, I could focus on a study or whatever assignment I was doing at the time, and vice versa. When I was doing my dissertation, I could kind of shut my laptop down, go to the gym, forget about the dissertation, and by the time I'd finished training, I was ready to do it.
So let's expand on this a bit, because you've gone from Olympic athlete to an ambassador for gymnastics to successful businesswoman. Because it was interesting what you said about having that identity. So how did you manage to still have your identity as Beth, moving through those different stages?
I think the main thing was gymnastics has developed me to be the person I am today. So the experiences I had, whether it was through success, whether it was through maybe results not going to plan, that's what's made me the person I am today. So a lot of it, ultimately, from the age of 12, 13, I was in the gym 25 to 30 hours a week. I spent more time there than I probably did in my own house. So it definitely, I don't think I can ever walk away from the point of saying I'm not an international athlete, because that is what has developed me to be the business person that I am today. But it also helped me transition, because I had those skill sets of determination, teamwork, resilience. If there's a scenario in business, if there's a scenario at home, it's not a case of just giving up. It's kind of, what was my athlete mentality? Right, here's a problem, what's the solution, and how do I solve it? Right, let's go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's still a transition, absolutely, but it just wasn't probably as rocky as some transitions can be.
Okay, well, let's talk about your business, the gymnastics business, because it's doing really well. And you do sort of like seminars into leisure centres and schools, don't you? And you have the physical gyms as well.
Yeah, so when I was young, my passion was getting kids involved in gymnastics. There's huge waiting lists for kids to get involved in gymnastics across the country. And what I'd seen gymnastics given me, I wanted to be able to provide that opportunity. And purpose-built facilities, they're hard to find, they're expensive to fund. So what we kind of did a different model. Let's find a school hall or a leisure centre. We can pack the equipment in and out each day. It gives the child the first opportunity to try gymnastics. And do you know what? They may love it, they may hate it, but actually, unless we're giving them that exposure, they may never know whether they actually really enjoy it. So that was kind of the philosophy behind it, of just giving every child the opportunity to try gymnastics.
And so you saw a sort of a gap in the market.
I guess so, yeah. And for me, the passion was always to give that opportunity. So we kind of opened the doors hoping for kind of 20 children, and suddenly realised we had about 100 knocking on the door, and we were like, okay, there's a big demand here for gymnastics, more than what we could probably fulfil. So it just kind of grew from there, and ultimately my background was elite level. I'd been in a purpose-built site, and my dream was to have a purpose-built site. I had pre-COVID about 20 academy sites. And then literally 2 weeks prior to national lockdown, I got the keys to my first purpose built. I was so excited, and then literally I was like, okay, we're shut. We can't open that business.
Right.
And again, that was a tough mentality to take, because you've waited nearly 10 years to get your keys. You get your keys, and then you're like, what do I do now? I've just signed a lease. I've just picked up these keys. I can't open the building, and we're public facing to children, and we can't see the children. So again, it was working with that athlete mentality. Obviously Steve was an athlete himself, and we worked as part of a bigger group with swimming, with Becky Adlington as well. So it was a case of, right, here's our problem, what's the solution? We'll take our lessons online. So through COVID, that's what we did. We still actively engaged children in activity during that really hard time for everyone. And then worked with contractors. And when we were given the green light to open in that July, it was a dream come true to open those doors. And for a lot of the children, it was the first time they were seeing their friends since lockdown. And again, it made me realise why I do what I do. Seeing the smiles, seeing that elation of them just being able to get back in, do gymnastics and be with their friends. Since then, it's just grown. I mean, I had 2 purpose-built sites and 10 academies, or 8 academies. And then there was one site that we were looking to sell. So I started to talk to a couple of businesses that were involved in gymnastics. And then it just grew arms and legs. We ended up selling one of the sites to another gymnastics business. And then Gymfinity Kids basically said, we would love to work with you, not just kind of buy one site. And that's kind of where the merger came from. And I think, I don't know, people think these big business sales come from big conversations that happen everywhere, but it was literally me texting someone saying, if I wanted to talk to someone in your business, who do I talk to? And then the guy emailing me saying, hey Beth, I hear you want to have a conversation, do you fancy meeting up? And from then, that's where the merger came from. And I'd never been through a merger. I'd had no idea what
It's
to
probably
expect.
one of the words that you wrote in your little notebook way back.
Yeah. What is
Where's
a
the
merger? So yeah, I think that I would say I have learned more in business in the past kind of 18 months than I have in 10 years going through those processes.
Now, Beth, we are going to interrupt the podcast a second because we've got a little section called Trending Takes, okay? Where I'm going to pose some comments that we've seen online. I'm going to pose them to you, and it'd be good to hear your take on it and what you think, okay? So the first one is, where there is passion, a business will never fail.
I think you've got to have the passion behind it. As you can see, my why is what drives me. So
Yeah.
I do agree with that, but I think there's probably a lot of businesses probably out there that haven't got the same passion but are still successful. But for me, it's definitely...
So again, it depends what drives you and the people around you. But I know what you mean, because there's some businesses you just think, how are they still going?
Yeah, but I guess there's people that are probably in my business that weren't necessarily passionate about gymnastics, but they're passionate about the area of the business that they work in, and they've developed the love of the sport because of the business they're working in. So they didn't necessarily apply to the business thinking, I'm a true gymnastics fan and I want to work in gymnastics. They've maybe seen a role within an area within the business, and as a result of it, they've learned about gymnastics, because not everyone is well adversed across gymnastics.
Number 2, university is too expensive. Go straight into business.
Do you know what? I've had this conversation recently with a few people because I did university. I think I loved it. It taught me independence. I moved away from home and I had the time of my life doing it. But I can absolutely see it is expensive and that there's definitely different routes now. You don't have to attend university to be successful in business. I would agree with that.
Okay. With young athletes, competition should be the focus.
I don't think competition should be the focus. I think they need to enjoy it and see the fun side of it. But I do think we need to teach an element of competition because ultimately in life, competition's everywhere.
Yeah.
When you go for a job interview,
You're competing for
you're competing against people. When you're doing your exams at school, although you're not directly competing, ultimately there's still going to be people that will score 100% and some people that are lower down the percentages. So competition is healthy, and I think it's really important to teach young children you can't always be the best, and that's okay. But give your best.
Yeah. It's quite a controversial one, isn't it? It is. So if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, please do get involved and leave your comments, as we'd love to know what you think of these trending takes. Now, you must wear so many hats when it comes to running your businesses. Which is your favourite hat?
Yeah, that's such an easy question to answer.
Go on.
Working with the kids. So yesterday I was doing assemblies. I did 5 school assemblies, must have seen well over 1,000 children, did some questions, photos, signatures, and absolutely that's the best part of my job, is getting to know the children and in trying to inspire them that they can achieve their dreams. It doesn't matter what that dream is, but with a little bit of hard work and effort and that vision, you can absolutely achieve it.
And when you see that and you feel it and you see that energy and feel it, it must make you want to be like, I can't wait for tomorrow.
It is, and that again, it's going back to that why. That's what drives me every single day, of why am I doing what I do. And even occasion when I get home from those visits, I'll receive messages from parents on social media just saying, my little kids come home today, they've met you this morning, they're really inspired, thank you so much. And it just validates that why of and it's just my favourite part, is being out of the office and being in the gym or in a school and working with the children.
You're beaming as you talk about it. I love that. I love that.
Don't think I have the same reaction with a board meeting. I do enjoy it. It's a challenge. But yeah.
Well, actually, talking of board meetings and, your business side, you would have experienced incredible coaching and incredible advice. You had the best people around you. How do you approach building the best team possible in your business?
I think it's the same. It's understanding, just like when we were putting a team together for a World Championships or Olympics, right? Whose strengths are where, and how do we build the team to get the best full puzzle at the end of it? So now it's a case of understanding. I don't need to know every single answer. And I think at first I did fall into that trap of I've got to know everything. People are looking up to me, and do you know what? My forte isn't marketing, it isn't IT, and that's okay. And bringing in a team around you of people who do know those things and using their skill set. So I'm again putting that puzzle together to create the big puzzle, and having people around you that you trust, they're great, and they share that same passion.
But are you ruthless though? Do you?
I wouldn't say ruthless.
No, I'm just asking because that mentality of sports people. It's like, got to be the best, or you got to have the best around you.
It's understanding each individual as well. So what is it that makes that individual work to the best of their ability? And do you know what? For some people, it isn't sitting in a 3-hour meeting. Sometimes it's actually picking the phone up to them or just going on a walk with them, right? tell us your ideas. How do we take that idea and make it to come to life? It's understanding your team as individuals and not expecting the same from every single individual in your team, because they're not carbon copies of each other, and that's fine.
So what you're saying is basically sometimes you've got to look at that person and say, what do they need?
Yeah.
Like you just mentioned, going for a walk
Yeah.
with somebody, and that's the best way, or picking up the phone to somebody
Yeah.
else. So tapping into that.
Checking in with people I find really helps. And not always just ringing and saying, have you done this? Have we got this? Do we need this? Have we done this? Where's this at? What's this task doing? Whereas actually just ringing someone and saying, how are you doing? And they're like, yeah, I'm okay, thanks.
Yeah,
like,
no catch.
Yeah.
Why is Beth ringing me?
I like to be able to just know that people can approach me, that people can pick up the phone and ask a question.
But there must be times that there are difficult conversations to be had.
Of course there are, yeah. I think there's... And again, I've worked with people. So I had Steve Parry, who he's been a great mentor to me, because his knowledge, his way with people, his experience, I've been lucky to have him as a coach in business and a mentor. And you don't necessarily sit down and say, this is what our relationship, but just by being in a meeting and learning from him. And again, my other business partner, Dave Robinson, he the same. Even now I'll pick up the phone to them a couple of times a week, right? I just want to bounce an idea off you. So if I'm ever in that position where I know that there's something that's got to be done about something, I will try and formulate a plan in my mind, write it all down, and then I will bounce it off the people that I know that I can trust.
Yeah.
And then they'll give me their honest opinion.
So 3 business partners? There's 3 of you?
So there was, for Beth Tweddle Gymnastics, there was 3 of us, yeah. So myself, Dave and Steve, and that was great. The relationship between the 3 of us was really close.
Yeah, so and that works really well.
Yeah.
I've interviewed people who've had business partners and it hasn't worked out.
Yeah.
How can you navigate that when sometimes opinions don't align?
I think you've always got to take a step back and understand what their opinion is and why that's their opinion. It's not just your way and your way only, because sometimes your way isn't the right way, and that's okay. But it's having that healthy conflict of being able to have a heated discussion, and then at the end of it going, should we go and get a drink? Or should we go and have a coffee? Or let's go for tea? Or whatever it is. Taking the person out of the role, and when you're having that conflict, you're not having the conflict with the person, you're having the conflict about the business scenario. It's not direct to the person.
And obviously you've all got that business at the heart of it.
Yeah.
You all care about the business.
Yeah.
So it's knowing that, it's sort of like separating the emotion from
Definitely.
from the goal.
Yeah.
But we've heard that you've got an interesting approach to failure. So I want to talk about that.
Yeah, I think failure is such an interesting word, because it is such a negative word. It's seen as a bad thing. Whereas actually failure is not a bad thing, because, and I always say to the kids that I meet, mistakes are our friends and mistakes are failures. That's what people see them as. Whereas actually you learn so much from a result not going your way. So whether it's in sport or whether it's in business, you do learn from those experiences, and it's how you react to that experience of things not going well that determines that scenario.
So when, you were competing, you all eyes on you, I remember watching you going, come on. And it didn't go your way. How did you deal with that? It's massive. That is, obviously that's not the same. Everybody's view of failure is different, but how would you deal with that? So
when it was my gymnastics kind of life, it was very much within 24 hours. Just don't talk to me for the first 24 hours. I was a bear with a sore head. I was frustrated with myself. I'd worked hard. It didn't go to plan. But literally by the time 24 hours had kind of gone and I was back in the gym, it was kind of like, well, I can't do anything about it. If I just sit and sulk about it, I'm not going to make it any better. So what's the next competition? What's the next goal? What's the next target? And how do I ensure the same thing doesn't happen again? So my mum always described it as I used to take the experience, put it in a box and shut the lid. Had a little collection of experiences, but I'd move on. The one time I would say that I really struggled to take that mentality was 2008 Olympics. I was absolutely going to that Olympics to pick up an Olympic medal, and I ended up fourth by 0.025. And even to this day, I've still not watched that routine all the way through. And
Really?
I just,
You haven't watched
I
it?
was heartbroken. I've seen snippets of it, and I can just remember how I felt that night, and not wanting to be a part of gymnastics. I felt I'd let myself down, but not just myself, because there's a whole team of people that had helped me get to that Olympics, and felt that I'd let so many people down. And how do you pick yourself back up from that? But every other event, it was 24 hours. But this one, I'd say it was more like 2 or 3 weeks. Coming home from the games, the whole of Team GB had done amazing. So you're on a flight home to Heathrow, you land to a media frenzy, everyone wants to congratulate you. And ultimately, I had still come fourth at an Olympic Games, but that wasn't what I wanted. And I am a perfectionist. If I don't get what I want, I'm stubborn. So when people were trying to congratulate me, it was just a case of, I don't want to be congratulated. Like, just leave me alone. So I went on holiday with my best friend, and it was halfway through that holiday, I just said to her, I can't give up. And she just said to me, honestly, she said, we all knew that, but we needed you to make that decision. And from that moment on, I rang my coach and said, I want to be back in the gym. I'd love to continue. And she said, great, let's get you back in. And I learned so much from that experience, but I can honestly say myself and Amanda never sat down. We never fully analysed it, because I just knew what I'd learned was enough. And yeah, it took a long time to close that lid on that box.
Gosh, I feel like I'm literally going, oh my goodness. I mean, that's strength. I mean, there's, if it was me, I'd have been like, right, I'm done with this.
Yeah, and I think, again, though, it went back to my why. I still loved gymnastics. I still knew I had more to give. There was an Olympic Games in your home country. And do I want to sit in that audience in London and think, I really wish I'd had a go at this? Whereas I always wanted to say, do you know what? I tried, it didn't work, I didn't make the team, I gave it my all. Luckily, I continued, I tried, I gave it my all, and it came out on the flip end of the chart of what I felt in Beijing. Yeah. That disappointment compared to the pure elation of London. I remember my brother saying to me, he's like, I'm so glad you won that medal. I'm like, okay, that's a really weird way of saying it. And he's like, Beth, I don't think I could have coped with my mum crying like she did after Beijing. And to that point, I had never known how it had affected my family. For me, I was devastated, but I didn't see the reaction on my family. It was only that moment that my brother said to me, I don't think I could have coped with mum crying again like that. And I was like, oh my God. So yeah, it's a support network. It's everyone around you that gives everything.
And you know what? There's going to be people listening now who are thinking of starting a business, or who are in something and thinking of changing course, wondering how they can grow. Now, obviously, we've talked a lot about the why, and I think that's your USP.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you'd like to share?
Don't be scared to have a go. Do you know what? I think I've made business decisions that weren't right for the business, and luckily haven't affected it too big. But there is times where I go, why did I even make that decision? Like, what was I thinking? But again, I learned a lot from making that decision, and it's made me think twice going forward. Right, have I got the full scope here? Is it the right decision for the business?
And not being afraid to admit it, because
there's been 2 or 3 things that we've done that in hindsight I probably wouldn't have done, but looking at that, actually everything happens for a reason. The reason the whole merger came across was because I was wanting to sell a site. Had I not wanted to sell that site, those conversations wouldn't have happened. So, yeah, I do think everything happens for a reason, and it is a roller coaster of a journey to that point.
Right, Beth. Do you fancy some rapid fire? I'm mixing things up for you.
Go on then.
Rapid fire questions. All right. Who is your inspiration in life?
I've got 2 answers. Can I give you 2?
I'm going to let you have 2.
Excellent. So I would say my dad and my mum have been hugely instrumental, inspirational, because they've always allowed me to go and explore, make mistakes, and they will be there to pick up the pieces if it doesn't quite go to plan. But then also within my sporting career, Kelly Holmes and Paula Radcliffe, they achieved so much throughout their careers, but they also had injuries. They still had disappointments, but they picked themselves back up and still achieved. And obviously I kind of looked to them and thought, gosh, if they've done it. I remember being on the plane home from Athens with Kelly Holmes, having just become the superstar that she was. And I was just so inspired. I was like, oh my God, look. And she's just a normal person. She was chatting to everyone, talking to, and it was just amazing.
Oh, I love hearing stories like that. She's great, isn't she? What advice would you give your younger self?
Not to want everything now. I think you want the result tomorrow, or you want the result today, whereas actually, as I've shown, it took 21 years to achieve my Olympic dream. 14 years later, my business is still growing. I'm still learning. I'm learning something every day. So actually, take your time.
What do you most enjoy about business?
It feels like I was when I was 7 years old in the gym. There's so much to learn. Every day is a school day. Yeah, I'm always learning. I'm writing a little note. My book.
How big is this notebook?
Do you know what? I've always got a notebook somewhere, whether it's in my bag, even like I've got one on my bedside table. If I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I write something down because otherwise I can't get back to sleep.
That's another good business tip. Good. You're just throwing them out. You never know. One thing nobody's talking about in business that they should be.
How do we engage the younger generation to be passionate and think about what they want to do early?
That's a good one. That's why you invest.
Try stuff.
Invest in young people like you do, so you can give them options.
Yeah.
So even if they don't want to be gymnasts when they get older, they've tried it.
Yeah, they've tried it. They've had a go at it.
Brilliant. Favourite work hack?
Having a notebook. Does that count?
I'll let you have that one. Do you know what? I'm going to get my notebooks out. I've had loads of them. I start them and they just...
Pen and paper is the best thing ever.
I know, we don't write enough anymore.
No, we don't.
One tip on how you stay motivated during tough times or setbacks. We sort of touched on this.
Yeah, remember your why. What is it? What's that passion, that reason why?
And finally, where can people follow you online to know more about you and your amazing business?
So Gymfinity Kids is the business, and you'll be able to see all about the classes that we do and the engaging stuff we do with our children. And then for myself personally, it is on Instagram and Twitter, Beth Tweddle News.
Fantastic. Do you know what? I've loved talking to you.
Oh, thank you.
You've got so much energy and positivity, and I'm sure your business is going to go from strength to strength.
I like to talk. That's the problem.
Yeah, me and you both.
Yeah.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope Beth's story has motivated you to pursue your own goals, whatever it may be. Stay with us for more insightful conversations on the NatWest Business Show.